A woman dies in a remote valley, and the evidence around her looks less like a life, and more like a deliberate exit. No ID, labels removed, a travel trail that doesn't want to be traced, a notebook that reads like code. Police leaned one way, the public leaned another, and the case became famous for one reason. It feels like someone tried to make the truth hard to name. Tonight, we rebuild the Isdal Woman story with one rule: confirmed facts first, uncertainty clearly labeled. Isdalen near Bergen is rugged, cold, and isolating. Exactly the kind of terrain where a final moment can stay unseen long enough for a story to fragment. When the body was discovered, investigators faced two problems at once: the death itself, and the near-total absence of normal identity anchors. In most cases, a name is step one. Here, step one was missing. Items were present, but identification was not. The pattern that made investigators pause wasn't just what existed, it was what was missing. Marks, labels, anything that connects a person to an origin. It didn't look like a simple robbery, because valuables weren't cleanly stripped. It looked like a controlled reduction of traceability, like someone had edited the biography out of the objects. Autopsy findings supported a medically explainable cause of death involving substances and poisoning mechanisms that can align with a suicide interpretation. But a forensic how does not automatically deliver a life story why. This case became iconic because the physical explanation never fully explained the behavioral architecture around her, why her trail looked engineered to avoid being recognized. Then the case widened. Abandoned luggage linked to her appeared, turning the investigation into a two-track puzzle: death and identity. Inside were items consistent with someone who traveled quietly: cash, personal effects, and objects that suggested appearance management. It was the moment investigators stopped asking only, "What happened in the valley?" and started asking, "Who was she before the valley?" Wigs, glasses, cosmetics, none of this proves espionage, but it proves a mindset: controlled presentation. When a person changes how they look while also suppressing traceable details, it creates a practical question. Are they hiding from someone? Or hiding from systems? Either way, the behavior points to intention, not randomness. A small notebook appeared with shorthand symbols and sequences, interpretable as a private logging method. Not Hollywood encryption, something simpler: recording movement without writing obvious names. That's the genius of the detail. You don't need a secret agency to want secrecy. You only need a reason to keep your path from being easily reconstructed. Hotel stays were linked to different names and stated backgrounds, often paid in cash. Witness descriptions painted a person who kept distance, guarded routines, and sometimes shifted presentation. Multiple identities can point in several directions, but they always share one consequence: they slow down identification and make the timeline fragile. Over and over, the case returns to a strange signature: labels removed from clothing and items. That takes time and patience. It's not a panic move, it's a method. In a mystery full of debate, this is one of the most concrete behavior fingerprints we have, an action that repeatedly chooses anonymity over convenience. Investigators reconstructed a last known timeline through records, but the final stretch, how she reached the valley and whether she was alone, remains a dark corridor. Mysteries don't survive on what we know. They survive on missing minutes. When a timeline breaks near the end, the mind fills the space with stories. Our job is to keep the gap visible, not to fill it with fantasy. Most sober interpretations fall into three buckets. 1. Suicide with an unusually concealed private life. 2. Homicide staged to resemble suicide. Or 3. An assisted scenario where another person influenced the last steps. Each can fit some evidence and clash with other pieces. That's why the case resists closure. Every theory pays a price somewhere. Codes, disguises, cash travel, multiple names. These ingredients resemble tradecraft to the public. But criminals and private fugitives can look similar, and even non-criminal reasons can produce secrecy. The right question isn't spy or not. It's which specific evidence requires a spy explanation, and which evidence is equally explained by a private life under pressure. Later forensic approaches, including dental and chemical analyses, were used to estimate possible early life geographic regions and life history patterns. These tools don't magically produce a name, but they can narrow the search space. In a case built on erasure, narrowing the map is like punching a small hole in a wall designed to be solid. Sketches and reconstructions exist for one reason. Recognition can do what databases can't. But it's also dangerous. Humans see patterns and invent certainty. The case attracts story-shaped tips. The only tips that matter are the ones that connect to something verifiable. A record, a photo context, a documented link. Genetics can identify unknown persons when reference material exists and legal/ethical pathways allow comparisons. But it's slow. Samples, chain of custody, permissions, and patient genealogical work, especially across borders. Still, if anything can defeat a life designed to be untraceable, it's DNA plus disciplined archival reconstruction. The Isdal Woman remains unnamed not because no one cared, but because her trail behaved like a system built to resist naming. Code instead of plain words, cash instead of traceable payments, labels removed like a ritual. Whether her ending was self-chosen or forced, the deeper mystery is the architecture of concealment that surrounds it. Comment the detail that feels most intentional, and subscribe to World of Mysteries.